I landed a $650,000 a year job, the kind people dream of. My mom's first words weren't congratulations. They were, "You'll send us 50%, and your sister gets 30%. No excuses." That's when I realized my success wasn't mine anymore. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Mara Quinn. I'm 29 years old, and after years of sleepless nights and hard work, I finally landed a position as a senior software architect at one of the top tech firms in Seattle. It was everything I'd ever wanted: a fresh start, financial freedom, and finally a feeling that I'd made it. I thought my mom would be proud of me. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I called to tell her the good news, she didn't even let me finish before asking how much I'd make. I told her the number, excited and nervous at the same time. She went quiet for a few seconds, then said in a calm, serious tone, "Good. You'll send us half, and your sister gets 30%. No excuses." At first, I thought she was joking. I laughed awkwardly, waiting for her to laugh too. But she didn't. Instead, she said, "Don't act surprised, Mara. You wouldn't be here without us. We sacrificed everything so you could have this life." My chest tightened. I had heard versions of this before, but never so direct, never so cold. My mom, Lydia Quinn, had always been controlling. Growing up, every choice I made was hers. What I studied, who I dated, even what I wore, it all had to go through her approval. She used to call me her investment, like I was a project she planned to cash in on one day. I guess that day had finally come. Then there was my sister, Tess. She was 23, beautiful, lazy, and spoiled beyond belief. She never kept a job for more than a week, but somehow she always had new clothes, new phones, and nights out paid for. My mom called her the baby of the family, even though she was an adult. And now she was supposed to get 30% of my income? I felt a strange mix of anger and sadness. I had imagined celebrating this moment with maybe going out for dinner, laughing, feeling like a family again. Instead, it felt like a business deal, except I wasn't the one with the power. My mom's voice grew sharp when I hesitated. "You owe us everything you have, Mara. We built you." I didn't argue. I just sat there, silent, realizing something I'd always known but never said out loud. Love in my family always came with a price tag. Maybe love in our house always came with a receipt. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mom had sent 13 messages before I even finished my coffee. Each one felt heavier than the last. "After everything I sacrificed for you," one said. "You wouldn't even exist without me," said another. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting tighter with every word. It wasn't a conversation, it was a verdict. She was reminding me that my life was hers to command. When I didn't answer right away, she called. Her tone was sharp, practiced, the same one she used when I was a kid and didn't do what she wanted. "Mara, we need that money now. Tessa's rent is due, and I'm behind on bills. Don't make this difficult." I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell her she couldn't just order me around anymore, but the words wouldn't come out. My throat felt locked. I'd spent my entire life learning that saying no to my mother was dangerous. It always came with yelling, guilt, or silence so long it hurt. So I said yes. My voice shook as I promised to send the first transfer by the end of the week. "That's my girl," she said sweetly, like she'd just petted a dog that finally sat down. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the black screen. My hands were trembling. That night, I wired $10,000 into her account. It felt like tearing a piece out of myself. But I told myself it would help, that maybe this would buy peace for a while. Maybe it would make her proud, even if it was only for a moment. 3 days later, Tess posted a photo in our family group chat, a mirror selfie in a glittering dress with the tag still on it. "Girls' weekend in Portland," she wrote, hearts and champagne emojis scattered around her message. My mom replied with clapping hands, and "You deserve it, honey." I stared at the picture, trying to breathe. $10,000, gone in 3 days, and they didn't even bother pretending it was for bills. I didn't respond. I didn't ask where the money went. I just watched as more photos rolled in: cocktails, hotels, shopping bags. My mom texted me separately. "See how happy your sister looks? That's what family is about. You did the right thing." Something inside me shifted. The guilt that had been sitting heavy in my chest started to fade, replaced by something colder, steadier. I realized I could hand over every dollar I ever earned, and it still wouldn't be enough. Their love came in exact amounts, measured by what I could give. But I didn't let them see that change in me. When my mother called again, I spoke softly, politely, the way she expected. I told her work was going well, that I was happy to help. Inside, though, I was counting every word, every sigh, every fake thank you. I knew now what I was to them, a paycheck with a heartbeat. And someday, I'd make sure that ended. Work became my escape. I threw myself into every project, staying late, skipping lunches, doing everything to keep my mind busy. My name started spreading around the office. the new architect who solved problems faster than anyone else. My manager started trusting me with major accounts, and for the first time, I felt seen for what I could do, not for what I could give. But just as things started feeling stable, something strange happened. One afternoon, my HR rep, Diane, stopped by my desk with a puzzled smile. "Hey, Mara," she said lightly. "Your assistant called this morning. She wanted to confirm your salary details for some financial planning." I froze. My assistant? I didn't have one. Diane looked confused. "Yeah," she said her name was Lydia. Sounded older. My stomach dropped. The only Lydia I knew was my mother. I laughed awkwardly, trying to hide the heat rushing to my face. "That's, not my assistant. That's my mom." Diane blinked, clearly unsure how to respond. "Oh," she said slowly. "Well, she was quite interesting." Then she walked away, leaving me standing there, humiliated. That night, I called my mother. The second she answered, I could hear her fake cheer. "Mara, I was just thinking of you." I didn't bother returning the pleasantry. "Why did you call my job?" I asked. Silence. Then a dismissive sigh. "Don't use that tone with me. I needed to know what you're really making. You weren't honest with us." My voice rose. "That's private, Mom. You can't just pretend to be my assistant and call my workplace." She laughed softly, the sound cold. "Oh, don't be dramatic. I have every right to know. We made you, Mara. You owe us forever." For a second, I couldn't speak. The words hit harder than I expected. Not helped you, not supported you. Made you. Like she'd built me from scratch and still held the patent. I tried to reason with her. "You can't keep doing this. You can't keep treating me like a thing you own." Her tone sharpened. "You're ungrateful. You think that fancy job makes you better than us? Don't forget where you came from." I hung up before she could say more. My hands were shaking, but my chest felt hollow, not scared anymore, just empty. I sat there for a long time, replaying her words. The truth settled heavy and clear. My mother didn't love me the way mothers are supposed to. She loved control. She loved the version of me she could command, manipulate, and profit from. That night, as the city lights flickered outside my window, something inside me finally cracked. The illusion was gone. All my life, I had believed that if I worked hard enough, gave enough, she would finally see me as a daughter. But she never would. Because in her eyes, I wasn't her child. I was her creation and her property. I stared at my banking app one last time before closing it. The transfers were done. No more payments, no more excuses. For weeks, I'd rehearsed the decision in my mind, imagining how it would feel to finally keep what I earned. The moment I hit stop, it felt quiet, almost peaceful, until the phone rang. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of old paper and coffee. I sat across from a man named Raymond Cole, mid-40s, calm voice, the kind that didn't rush bad news. He flipped through the documents I'd brought, scanning them with quiet focus. When he finally looked up, his expression told me everything before he spoke. "Mara," he said carefully, "I think there's more here than you realize." He began laying out the findings one by one. There were credit cards I'd never opened, bank loans I'd never applied for, and a second mortgage tied to a house I didn't own. Each line on the report carried my social security number. My hands went numb as I watched him highlight page after page. He explained that the accounts stretched back almost a decade. Some dated to when I was still in college, just 21, barely earning enough for rent. "Whoever did this had full access to your personal information," he said. "It's consistent with identity theft, but it's close to home." I didn't have to guess. Lydia had always handled my paperwork, college forms, tax filings, anything that required a signature. Back then, I thought she was being helpful. Now I understood it had been preparation. Tess's tuition payments, Mom's car, even the house she bragged about paying off early, it had all been on me. Raymond's tone softened. "You've been carrying their debt for years without knowing." He showed me the totals. The number made me dizzy. Every raise, every bonus I'd celebrated had been feeding bills I didn't even know existed. I felt sick. My whole adult life, I'd believed I was independent, that I'd built something on my own. Now it turned out I'd been standing on a trap she'd set long ago. Raymond offered options, fraud reports, criminal charges, asset freezes. But I barely heard him. My thoughts were spinning too fast. I pictured her sitting at the kitchen table years ago, smiling while I signed whatever paper she slid my way. I remembered her saying, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." And she had, just not for me. When I left the office, the air outside felt colder than before. My phone buzzed with another message from Tess, a selfie with some friend at a spa. I deleted it without opening. They had taken enough from me already. I spent the evening sorting through my own records, cross-checking every account, every statement. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just greed. It was strategy. They'd built a system around me, one that made sure I could never really escape. But I wasn't going to explode or scream. That's what they'd expect. No, I would be patient, careful. I would clean the mess quietly, build my case, and let the truth do the damage for me. By the time I closed my laptop, the anger had settled into something steadier. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was preparing the endgame. I called her one Sunday afternoon, voice soft, careful. "Mom," I said, "maybe we should start over." The pause on the other end lasted long enough for me to hear her suspicion melt into satisfaction. "Well," she said, "it's about time you came to your senses." I told her I wanted to make things right, that I missed her and Tess, that I'd even pay for them to visit Seattle. She didn't hesitate. Within minutes, she was planning dates and demanding first-class seats. I agreed to everything, letting her think she'd won. The final night of their visit began quietly. Dinner plates still sat on the counter, untouched. Lydia paced the living room, her voice sharp, accusing me of keeping secrets. Tess lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone like none of it mattered. The air felt heavy, tight with the kind of tension that comes before a storm. I'd told them I couldn't give them any more money. Just that one sentence, calm and steady. Lydia froze, her expression twisting into something wild. "What did you say?" she asked, voice trembling with fury. I repeated it, slower this time. "No more." Then everything shattered. She swept her arm across the table, sending glasses crashing to the floor. "You ungrateful brat," she screamed. "Everything in this place exists because of me." Tess jumped up, yelling too, her words tumbling over each other. Lydia stormed into my bedroom, flinging open drawers, grabbing jewelry, clothes, anything she could touch. "I deserve this," she shouted. "I deserve all of it." I didn't move. I just stood in the doorway, watching her tear through my life. My heartbeat was steady, my hands still. When she tried to take my laptop, I picked up the phone and called the police. My voice didn't even shake. By the time the officers arrived, the apartment looked like a scene after a burglary. Lydia argued with them, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. "She's my daughter," she said, gesturing toward me. "This is family business." The officer's face stayed blank. "Ma'am, you need to step outside." Tess started crying then, dramatic and loud, accusing me of turning on my own blood. I stood near the door, silent, while they were escorted out. Lydia's final words echoed down the hallway. "You'll regret this, Mara. You owe me everything." When the door shut, the quiet rang in my ears. I picked up a broken glass, set it on the counter, and finally exhaled. The chaos was over, but something colder had taken its place, a calm that came from knowing exactly what to do next. The following morning, I walked into Raymond's office and handed him the recordings. His eyebrows rose as he listened to the clips. Lydia admitting to ownership, Tess bragging about the money, their voices full of arrogance. "This is more than enough," he said. "We'll file everything today." The paperwork went through faster than I expected. Identity theft, credit fraud, financial exploitation, all with evidence strong enough to hold. Investigators reached out that same week. Lydia and Tess were both named in the report. When I left the courthouse, the city looked brighter somehow. I didn't feel joy, just relief, the deep, quiet kind that follows a long, hard breath. But I knew I wasn't done. Justice was moving, yes, but I wanted more than that. They'd taken years from me, and now it was my turn to take back every piece they thought they owned. Weeks passed before I heard anything more. Then the news started trickling in piece by piece. Lydia's neighbors began whispering first. Her friends, the ones who once praised her for raising such a successful daughter, stopped answering her calls. One by one, the people she used to brag to vanished. The image she'd built, perfect mother, respected woman, pillar of her little town, started cracking in public. It had been months since the last letter when my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number from my hometown. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. A woman's voice introduced herself as a nurse from St. Vincent's Hospital. She said my mother was sick and had asked for me. The words sank in slowly. For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Then I agreed to come. The drive back felt like moving through an old photograph. Streets that looked smaller, houses that hadn't changed, everything frozen in time except me. The hospital sat on the edge of town, gray and quiet under a pale sky. When I walked in, the smell of disinfectant hit first, then the faint hum of machines. Lydia looked smaller than I remembered, lying in a hospital bed surrounded by wilted flowers. Her hair was thinner, her voice softer, but the sharpness in her eyes was still there. "You came," she said, half smiling. "I knew you would." I didn't answer. I just pulled a chair closer. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The monitors beeped steadily, filling the silence she once ruled over. Then she sighed and reached for my hand. "They're saying I might need another treatment," she began. "Insurance doesn't cover everything. I was hoping you could help with the hospital bills." There it was, the familiar rhythm, the same tone she'd used my entire life. Not a request, but a command wrapped in weakness. I met her gaze and saw no remorse, only calculation. Even now, she was trying to pull me back into the same role, the provider, the daughter who never stopped paying. Tess appeared a few minutes later, her makeup smudged, her eyes red from crying. She barely looked at me before saying, "Mom needs you. You can't just leave her like this." The guilt was rehearsed, familiar, practiced like a family tradition. I reached into my purse and pulled out my checkbook. Tessa's expression softened, assuming I'd given in. I wrote slowly, careful not to tremble. When I finished, I tore the page neatly and placed it on the bedside table. Beside it, I set a folded note. Lydia squinted at the paper. "What is this?" she asked. "A check," I said quietly. "For everything you ever wanted from me." She lifted it with trembling fingers, her face tightening when she saw the number. $1. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I stood before she could recover. Tessa's voice rose behind me. "You can't be serious," she snapped. "After everything?" I didn't turn around. "Exactly after everything," I said, my tone calm final. As I reached the doorway, I looked back once. Lydia's hand still clutched the check, her eyes wide, unreadable. The note beside it read, "That's all you ever saw me as. Now you've got it." Then I walked out of the room, out of the hospital, out of the town that had once owned me. This time, I didn't look back. A full year passed before I realized how long it had been since I'd heard their names spoken out loud. Oregon had a way of keeping things quiet. Soft rain, tall trees, long roads that swallowed sound. My new home sat at the edge of a small town, a place where no one knew my history. People greeted me politely at the market, asked about my work, and never pressed for more. I liked that. It was the kind of peace I'd spent my entire life chasing without even knowing it.